The Butt Kicker Gamer 2. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
The PRL NASCAR Cup Series historic tour continues from Legacy, Kentucky to Legacy, Michigan to Rockingham to Darlington to here at Atlanta Motor Speedway in its former configuration. In the outside world, Atlanta's been turned into a super speedway, but in the virtual world, through our powers of laser scanning and physics simulation, the bumps and abrasiveness of Old Atlanta live on. Welcome to round 5 of the PRL NASCAR Cup Series in 2023, live from the virtual Atlanta Motor Speedway, circa 2008. Hi everybody, Joey Tebben here alongside Taylor Burris in the booth, up on the roof, and with our producer Hugo Luis behind the scenes. Taylor, it's been many hours of racing this weekend for both you and I, but we're here at Old Atlanta, the old version of Atlanta, and things are, they're either going to be nutty or they're going to be peachy, to use two Georgia references.
Well, I don't think the opposite is going to be not peachy as well. In fact, it's going to be nutty for a lot of these drivers. This track here is going to tear up the tires. It is all going to be about conserving tires, and conserving more tires all throughout the run if you want to have a shot of being in contention for the race win here tonight. A lot of drivers are also looking forward to seeing how this plays out, because some of these drivers could have also not got any sleep leading up to this race while watching another big event in a little bit further south in Daytona Beach, Florida. So that's going to also be a possibility for some drivers here tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to endorse this being a nutty race. I've got a prop over here. I've got my jar of Georgia peanut butter. People always think of Georgia as the peach state, but no, it's the peanut state as well. I would take a spoonful of that if I wasn't about to read you the schedule for the PRL NASCAR Cup Series this season. We're about halfway here. This is sort of the historic tour, the end of the historic tour, rather. Next week, we travel to Iowa Speedway, the short track at Iowa, and then the Daytona Road Course is our one sort of wild card road course round of the season. And then we start to sync up with the real-life NASCAR Cup Series schedule, with Daytona, with Auto Club, with Las Vegas. Things start to get a little bit more normal here, but this is the benefit of having Season 1 here. In the NASCAR off-season, we can sort of make our own calendar, go to some interesting tracks we don't normally go to, and it allows us this week to go back to a version of Atlanta that we don't get to see anymore in the real world. In the first four... Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to say it really does, and of course, all the NASCAR schedules are pretty exciting, I'd have to say, for this off-season.
Always exciting. Taylor was so excited about Atlanta, he had to get in there, and then the standings, in the driver's standings, look pretty different from last season because they're topped by a driver who wasn't here last season. It's Matthew Long who tops the sheets right now over last season's playoff champion Abner Acosta. James O'Brien has been Mr. Consistent, 6th, 5th, and 3rd in the first 4 rounds of this season. Josh Daniels and Richard Regan Jr. fighting over 5th. Chris Hudson and Pat Harvey fighting over 6th. Brett Punkari's turned things around as of late. He's going to fight with Lou Christian and Jay McDonald for those last couple of spots in the top 10, separated by only a few points. The Teams Championship is much closer than the Drivers Championship. Dirty South Racing and Private Label Team Hype separated by only 6 points. They've both had quite good seasons. Love Racing sits third in a sort of a league of their own, because SGE Esports with Pioneer and Overdrive, they're about 50 points back each. YS Motorsports finds themselves in 6th and 8th with their yellow and black teams. The third SGE Esports team is 7th, and then Private Label Team Hype's secondary squad, the black team, is 9th, and Aero Kinetics, a new team for this season, their 222 squad, rounds out the top 10 in the team standings. Qualifying about to tick over here in the race session, but before we can get into tracking our drivers' performance, we have to thank all the people who make all of this possible. First and foremost, it's the VCO, the virtual competition organization, helping us out here at RaceSpotTV and helping make every single Precision Racing League broadcast possible this season and every season. This coverage is also brought to you by Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminum profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. This coverage is additionally brought to you by Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, their button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and also get a 5% discount, also using the Precision5 coupon code. Then from Racebox, we slide over to RaceLab. It's RaceLab apps, and they help you to improve your driving skills. With modern overlays, race statistics, and native VR integration, you can get the best out of iRacing. Start using it now for free at racelab.app. This coverage is brought to you by The Butt Kicker. Butt Kicker products provide an incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat with The Butt Kicker. And new for this season, this coverage is brought to you by Mecha Sim Hardware. Mecha Sim Hardware is a small company from the Czech Republic, and their goal is to produce high-quality sim racing hardware. If you're looking for a high-end pedal set, handbrake, or sequential shifter, visit Mecha Sim Hardware's eShop right now to get you up to speed and check them out. And last but not least, as always, it's Ninja Trader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Of course you are. Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, Ninja Trader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. Ninja Trader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit ninjatrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. And it's about time to start tracking the driver's performance. And this is what it looks like. Trent Dinkel has had a hellish start to the season in both this series and in his new escapades on Wednesday nights. But he topped practice, he's top qualifying for the moment. Things are looking up for Trent Dinkel.
They certainly are. In fact, it's currently right now a Private Label Team Hype 1, 2, 3 for the moment, as James O'Brien's just moved up to P3 on the time charts, as we see the Krispy Kreme machine of Chris Hudson rounding out your top 4. As field is trying, it currently has 2.5 minutes left to go in qualifying, as we pick up Roy Grande and the Aerokinetic 233 or 223 team in 21st position for the time being. He's going to try to see if he can pick it up just a tick in order to see if he can break into the top 20.
You know, we see the Krispy Kreme car. We see a guy named Grande. This jar of peanut butter that I have on my desk is a prop, Taylor. It's making me more and more hungry with every second. I might have to do the first peanut butter mouth call of a PRL race. But Roy Grande brings up to the line. He actually does find an extra 10th. Advances only one spot for his efforts, though, from 22nd to 21st. Still 2 minutes left in the session, though. Most drivers have elected to go out very early, get their runs out of the way, but Matthew R.D. Campbell, he's waited a little bit longer, and he gets his reward because he gets the spotlight to himself.
He certainly does, and that number 27 Aerokinetic Chevrolet putting on a great drive here, a 30.88. That's good enough to put him in the top 20. Let's see if he can try to improve on that, and he's tracking in the right direction for the time being as he's trying to pick up a little bit of speed. You see him running the outside lane for the most part, and this is where we're going to see a lot of drivers during these races with the next-gen cars, trying to stick to the top side in those early stages, then dive it down to the bottom of that white line for as much as possible during this race.
Here comes Matthew R.D. Campbell to the line. He does find another about 2/10, 1.5 tenths. Kicks Byron Johnson off of row 8 there. He puts himself 16th. Richard Regan Jr. for Dirty South Racing has had some bad luck in recent weeks, especially last week at Darlington. Got taken out from the lead of the race, if I remember correctly, or at least chasing down the lead of the race in an incident with Clayton Ham. The admins of the series determined that it was nobody's fault, so nobody got a penalty. Richard Regan Jr., though, in qualifying, seems to have just penalized himself. I think he got into the wall there on lap 1.
He certainly did. He's only going to be in 25th position for the time being, and with only 30 seconds left to go, he's on his second lap. And with that wall scrape, I don't know if this lap is going to count here as he comes across the line. A 35-1, but it will not count. In fact, yes, it will count, moving him up to P6.
Yeah, I was all sorts of confused there, though. That was his second lap, and somehow it did count. There must have been absolute millimeters there for that to count. But Richard Regan Jr. does get away with a little bit of a scary moment, and he splits his two Dirty South Racing teammates with Long and Stout, 5th, 6th, and 7th. But things look a little bit more familiar. It's been a Dirty South festival in qualifying for the past couple of races. Dinkel and Acosta struggled in qualifying at Darlington last week, but things look a little bit more like the PRL NASCAR Cup Series normally does, because the front row, how familiar. It's Trent Dinkel and Abner Acosta starting alongside each other on the front row for the umpteenth time. It's actually a private label team hype 1, 2, 3 because James O'Brien, Mr. Consistency, finds himself in third alongside Chris Hudson. Matthew Long, your championship leader, wants to go for 4 wins in a row. He's got 4 drivers to pass, though, as he starts alongside Richard Regan Jr. on the third row. Taylor Stout makes it Dirty South Racing 5, 6, 7. He's alongside Josh Daniels. Jeff Chandler qualifies P9, and a good qualifying from Waldo Walden to find himself in the top 10. Brett Punkari in the Peugeot starts alongside Pat Harvey, and unlucky 13th went to Lou Christian alongside Robert Besaw Jr. Private label team hype Blacks Brandon Walter starts 15th alongside Scotty Johnson. Matthew R.D. Campbell starts alongside Byron Johnson. It's Johnson and Johnson in the middle of the field. Jose the Funky Cold Medina starts 19th alongside Johan Seminario, Richard Pruitt, Tom Amasi, and Mike Witt and Ken Holland bring us down to 24th place. But the hits keep on coming. It's a big field tonight. Roy Grande, 25th alongside Clayton Ham. Eric Papineau probably going to be disappointed with a P27 in qualifying. He starts alongside Aaron Beaver. Jordan Slater's 29th, and Stephen Hassett got a 2X in qualifying, so he starts in 30th. Jay McDonald, last driver to actually set a qualifying lap time, and then Charles Sumner and Mark Kalin, both elected not to qualify. They will start shotgun on the field. It's not a race in Indianapolis, Indiana, but there are 33 cars here. It's 107 degrees Fahrenheit. As if this place wasn't abrasive and bumpy enough, these tires are going to get even more shredded in the summer Georgia heat.
They certainly are, and it's just going to be absolutely brutal. We're going to see how drivers will have to negotiate when it comes to trying to conserve their tires during these long stints of the race here. Usually we'll see about a stint anywhere between 50 to about 60 laps, but I'm pretty sure these drivers are wanting to come down pit road as soon as possible in order to get a fresh set of tires in this stage of the race. But with that, it is time to get ready to go racing.
Waiting for the iRacing sedan pace car to pull off here and get us going on the formation lap. We are ready to go. Trent Dinkel bursts off, Abner Acosta bursts off, and in about 1.5 miles, we will be ready to go racing at Old Atlanta. It's not the super speedway, but I think this has the ability to give us even more unpredictability because it is a track we don't go to in real life. It's a track that is no longer modern. Everybody has experience on it, but it is still shaking up expectations a little bit.
It certainly has here, and this track is going to be still a fan favorite for a lot of drivers on the iRacing service and even here in the PRL because it is so unique compared to what we are usually used to seeing now with the Atlanta Motor Speedway, where it's high speeds draft package. This is a track that you have to test your driving skills and how well you manage your equipment during the long runs of the race.
It's private label team hype 1, 2, 3 on the grid. I have not counted the amount of times that Dinkel and Acosta have qualified 1, 2, but I have to imagine it is quite a few. It's definitely approaching the double digits because Trent Dinkel on his own has 16 poles now in PRL NASCAR Cup Series competition. That is approaching all-time numbers in terms of pole positions in the PRL. He's in the top 15, well on his way to the top 10 in poles. If he can keep up the speed this season, he likes Atlanta, does the rest of the field. The iRacing sedan pace car pulls onto the Old Atlanta pit road, and we're back in 2008, and we're back green at Old Atlanta. Good lap one for Trent Dinkel ahead of his teammate Abner Acosta. Chris Hudson breaks up the private label team hype party. He's up to third. Matthew Long challenges O'Brien for fourth.
All about this side by side as they work down the back straightaway 2 by 2 as we see James O'Brien trying to find an opening to get around Matthew Long on the outside lane. The outside lane is a good idea, maybe the early stages, but it's still going to be a little bit treacherous because the inside is currently the fastest way around this racetrack here, as they're now going to go single file for the time being. Richard Reagan Jr. trying to see if he can get around Jeff Chandler in the 31 as they head back into 2.
Taylor Stout trying to join his teammate Matthew Long and swallowing up O'Brien. O'Brien has been kind of a long-run guy this season. He's said himself that he's got lucky a couple times. Maybe his consistency streak has been helped by a little bit of luck, but he has been the epitome of consistency. Top 6 in every single race. His positions have only gone up. And right now, he's currently in the center of a hornet's nest as Chris Hudson tries to challenge forward, and Josh Daniels challenges Jeff Chandler for 7th.
Jeff Chandler really having a good run right now in the middle of this pack as we pick up the 21 machine of Luke Christian. I have to say, out of all the drivers who've made the most improvements, it has to be Luke Christians. We saw him when we first started doing the PRL. He was towards maybe the back half of the field, maybe outside the top 10. Now it's a regular occurrence to see him right there in the mix fighting for a top 10 week in and week out as we see him in the shortest staircase in the world.
There it is.
Battle here.
Got his best result of the season, or one of his best PRL races ever at Michigan earlier this season. Fought for a win for really the first time. And, of course, Taylor does point out the 5th member of our broadcast team here on Sundays. It's the world's shortest staircase. He's joined by a hat tonight. I think that, I can't actually read what that hat says, but I did see a dog tail a little bit earlier. So maybe there's a 6th member of the team.
Seems to be so indeed as we ride on board with him. Looking at how much he's hugging that white line. That's going to be very important to do so in these early stages to help conserve the tires a little bit as the run progresses here. But already, after just running 6 laps, we're already falling off the pace anywhere between 2 to 3/10 of a second compared to what the laps is. In fact, for some drivers, they're already falling off half a second.
James O'Brien is just getting swallowed up here. So we've ridden on board with Luke Christian. You can see a car to the outside just getting absolutely swallowed by the bottom lane. Stout got by O'Brien. Chandler got by O'Brien. Regan got by O'Brien. He's down to P8 already from the start, and the bleeding has stopped for the moment, but there's another bright red car ready on the attack. Josh Daniels is behind. Luke Christian's behind as well. But for the moment, we have gone a little bit train mode. And as I say that, I'm proven wrong because Josh Daniels has derailed the train. He's going to the outside.
And everyone is going to follow with him on the outside. The Love Racing 77 will do battle with James O'Brien to the outside as they come through the middle of turns 3 and 4. There you see Luke Christians in the catbird seat waiting for the opportunity. How about Brett Pancari in the Peugeot right there in the mix? And I gotta say, that is a weird manufacturer to have in NASCAR, but that is one of the privileges that we get to do when it comes to sim racing. You can pretty much put any manufacturer in this series here as they continue to do battle. We had Dodges earlier this year, now a Peugeot.
Thank you for also pronouncing it Peugeot. Arjuno was making fun of me for that a couple of weeks ago, but how else am I supposed to say it? That's how I'm gonna say it in my American drawl.
Pretty much.
Brett Pancari, and potentially one of the most exciting backgrounds as well. We talk about Luke Christian with the world's shortest staircase. Now we talk about Brett Pancari with what we know now are curling jerseys in the background. A whole blockbuster full of DVDs. It's a party in Brett Pancari's basement every week.
It certainly is. And how about curling? That's a pretty fun sport to try to watch it on it. Have a little fun with as they work their way down the back straightaway. There you see him try to focus on and see if he can get into the top 10.
Waldo Walden, remember he qualified in the top 10, I believe, for the first time this season. Fallen out of the top 10, currently runs P12, but he suddenly finds a buddy to play with. Brett Pancari ahead. Doesn't seem like anybody really wants to get out of the line, though. If you're forced to get out of the line, you can make it work, but basically all the way back to P20, everybody seems pretty interested in just riding in line here, staying in the draft for that matter, and not really poking out of them.
Everyone's trying to just mind their P's and Q's here. Maybe pick up a spot if someone makes a mistake out there on the circuit. But other than that, just taking their time, not really want to force the issue in later stages of this race and make sure that they have the tires needed as they progress further and further into the run.
Matthew Long has slowly but surely moved his way up the order as well. He's up to second. Abner Acosta, the tire wizard, has fallen to fourth, but as we always talk about, it's early days in the run. It's only lap 11 right now. We're not even a tenth of the way through the race. Acosta has fallen in the short term, but in the long term, I have to imagine the tire wizard has something up his sleeve, and on pace, he's not necessarily actually fighting with his new yellow and black buddies and Taylor Stout and Richard Regan Jr.
We have the bumblebees now starting to form themselves up here on the track. A swarm of them, indeed, as we get some foot camera action from Richard Regan Jr. Look how much throttle input he is having to use and work that throttle in the middle of the corners here as he tries to work his way through. Watch him back off a little bit, get on the brakes just a tad in order to try to carry some speed. You want to do that. You don't want to just get off the throttle and not use the brakes, because the more you do that, that means you're going to be using your tires up way too quickly and cost a chance to maybe work your way up through the field and end up falling backwards. You got to apply a little bit of brakes, help turn the car into the corner, and then slowly start to push the throttle. As you see right there that Richard Regan is doing. He finds his mark, slowly gets back on throttle, and it's still running some very consistent lap times.
Richard Regan Jr. down to one night of PRL racing a week. He was originally racing on Wednesday nights, got a win in the first round of the season there at Darlington, but other commitments have come up on Wednesday nights, not able to race anymore in the Xfinity Series rather on Wednesday nights, so this is the one night of PRL week for Richard Regan Jr. This is where it all counts. This is where it all matters. He wants to get back to victory lane on Sunday.
Going to try to see what he can do as he tries to work with his teammate, the number 66 of Taylor Stout, the two Dirty South teammates working together a little bit, but Richard Regan thinks better of it. He wants to dive down to the inside and pick up a spot to break into the top 5.
It's the first pass we've really seen in this swarm up here. Richard Regan Jr. clearly thinks he's fast enough, clearly has the pace to go for that move, and indeed he does. But the swarm lives on. The simulation swarm, I should say. If there's any Big Thief fans in the chat. Yellow, black, yellow, black, yellow, black, Dirty South and Private Label Team Hype. They're all blending in with each other.
They certainly are indeed here as they work their way through down the back straightaway. And then you got to throw in another Private Label team of James O'Brien right there behind the two Dirty South drivers as they work through the middle of turn 3 and 4. Jeff Chandler watching on in the 31 Reaper Speed Lab Chevrolet in the mix as he tries to see if he can work his way up further up in the field.
Challenge for the lead. Matthew Long is sick of running behind Trent Dinkle. He peeks to the inside in 1 and 2. The outside works for Dinkle for the moment. Matthew Long's got to be careful here not to get swallowed up. But he's not going to get swallowed up by the train because Chris Hudson elects to follow him to the bottom, give him a little bit of a push. Matthew Long tries to clear Trent Dinkle for the lead.
About the focus right there from Trent Dinkle as you ride on board with him. Got to be careful with the tracking out. You could easily hit the wall off turn number 4 as they will drag race into turn 1. Give the lap still to Trent Dinkle. Matthew Long now sends it in a little bit deeper. Slides right up in front of him and completes the pass. New race leader, Matthew Long. But here comes the crossover move. Down the back straightaway. The big momentum to Trent Dinkle as they'll drag race into 3.
That was a road course style crossover for Trent Dinkle. Put that in the textbook for how you do that. Back to the inside of Matthew Long, but Long has been strong on the inside. Is he as strong on the outside? He started 5th in this race, but it seemed like a foregone conclusion that he was going to find his way to the front. Unfortunately for him, he does have quite a challenge, though, from Trent Dinkle, who's still to his inside through 1 and 2. But Long does seem to have a little bit more tire life. He's a little bit high through 1 and 2, though. Trent Dinkle slides as well. They're both evening out.
Took a little scrape of the wall right there for Matthew Long here as we ride on board with Chris Hudson in the Krispy Kreme Chevrolet as he is trying to watch on here. Look how much input you see him steering in the corners right there. You don't want to put too much of it, and you don't want to be really sawing as much as he is because that could cause a little bit of wear and tear on the tire degradation as you see him now try to put a smoother point in on to the turn 1 entry. Backs it up just a little bit here and gets a little loose though off corner exit. That's going to not be good for the tires as this run progresses.
Dinkle finally has to slot back in line behind Matthew Long. The outside worked for Long, and Trent Dinkle has been deposed from the lead. It's not to say he's been deposed from the lead in the long term. We know Trent Dinkle is a tire wizard in and of himself. Last season, with his teammate Abner Acosta, he was able to pull off some absolutely masterful tire-saving performances against the guy who we thought was the master, Abner Acosta. Unfortunately for both of these guys, Matthew Long has also been kind of a tire wizard this season, winning at places like Darlington and Rockingham that absolutely destroy the tires. You can be a tire wizard all you want, but when you're fighting against two other wizards, I'm no magician, but that's kind of like fighting against an unstoppable object.
It certainly is. It's a magical war indeed between those three, as they will try to see who has the better tire strategy. So far this season, it has gone to Matthew Long, but will we see maybe a return of Private Label with their two tire wizards to return to the front of the field, or could someone else step up? I have a feeling Chris Hudson has been learning quite a bit from the tire wizards to make him a chance to become a wizard in tire saving in the near future.
Yeah, Chris Hudson is sick and tired of what we always say about him and Josh Daniels. You know, they're always the guys who are fighting in third and fourth. They're always in the top five. They're just never quite fighting for the wins. They're some of the most consistent drivers in the PRL NASCAR Cup Series, but somehow it never quite goes their way. It's always third, it's always fourth, it's always fifth. One of these days, Chris Hudson has to get a win of his own.
He's going to certainly try to do that indeed here, as now we see Trent Dinkel look to the inside, thinks better of it, backs himself up to where he can slot back behind Matthew Long as they head down into turn 3 and 4. We're already over a second off the pace of our best times that these drivers have, and we're not even at 25 laps.
Dinkel still challenging Long, but just kind of letting him know he's there. It's a nose to the top, it's a nose to the bottom. Dinkel's trying to unsettle Matthew Long, but he's having quite a difficult time of it. He goes for the crossover again. It worked for him earlier, and it's worked for him again. Dinkel has mastered the crossover in 1 and 2. He's back to the inside of Matthew Long. Can he make it stick this time, though?
He's got a lot of work to do, as he will stick to the inside. I got to remember, at one point, Trent Dinkel was a former Dirty South driver himself at one point or another, so he has really got to make sure he can hold on and see what he can do against his former team as they try to go side by side for the race lead. But here comes Matthew Long powering back on the outside. Dinkel still keeping the inside tucked up right against that white line, and they'll drag race down the back straightaway.
3 and 4 again. It seems like Dinkel keeps getting a little bit too high through 1 and 2. He's not quite hitting the line he needs to hit on the bottom, and that mistake just kind of evens things out because it forces Matthew Long more up the road. It forces Trent up the road, and as these two kind of trip over each other a little bit, Chris Hudson's probably pretty happy because it keeps him within touching distance of the two leaders as they continue to run side by side and drive up the hill in 1 and 2.
They're going to do the best that they can here, as now we see Dinkel trying to push Long a little further up the racetrack here. Can't quite make it work, as now Long will power back on the outside lane, as they will still remain side by side through the middle of the corner.
I believe Dinkel led at the line that last time, so he did get another lap led. Is Matthew Long going to lead at the line this time? It's a matter of thousandths. It doesn't really matter, though, because they are directly locked side by side. Long tries to pinch Dinkel down a little bit. They almost made contact coming into 1 there with the squeeze from Long. Long's back up the hill. Dinkel's back on the bottom, but again, they even out as they both drift it through 1 and 2.
You got to be careful with that. You don't want to be using up your tires, and this could open the door for someone else to come into play here and really start to challenge the race leaders here at the moment as they work their way out of turn 3 and 4. Long really gets to go. Ooh, trouble for Chris Hudson. Scrapes the wall off turn 4.
Just the barest of nicks into the wall for Chris Hudson. He's under pressure from who else but the tire wizard Abner Acosta. As Long and Dinkel have been wringing out the necks of those cars and wearing those tires, Abner Acosta's just been riding in fourth, biding his own time. Chris Hudson gets into the wall again through 1 and 2, and Abner Acosta's up to third. Matthew Long and Trent Dinkel are about to get scared.
They certainly are, and they're really going to put on a drive right here as Acosta now moves up to P3. Richard Reagan right there in the mix as well in 5th position. He is trying to close in on Chris Hudson and move a little closer.
And another bobble off of 4 for Matthew Long allows Trent Dinkel to get back to the inside. Is this his chance to get clear? I thought he had the momentum, but no, he fades up again. Long still holds the outside. These two can't stay off of each other. Every time Long takes the lead, Dinkel catches him back. Every time Dinkel takes the lead, Long gets him back. These two are dead even.
They certainly are, and they're going to keep it going as they battle on for the race lead. 5 cars battling for 1 position. You gotta love it here in Atlanta.
And another slide off of 4 for Matthew Long. It's almost like Mark Kalin corner a couple of seasons ago at Texas. Every single time, Long is just getting a little bit out of shape. And in the process, he's given up his precious outside to Trent Dinkel, who's going to sweep around the outside. Dinkel goes the long way around on Long.
Inkle really putting on a great drive here as now crossover Acosta up to second, and now it's going to be back to the private label 1-2. Will Long be able to capitalize and find a way his round? How about Chris Hudson working the outside lane, trying to build the big momentum to see if he can sneak third away?
He's going to get to the outside along through the quad oval. Matthew Long, after 3 weeks in a row of winning, after 3 weeks in a row of mastering the tire life, he seems to be struggling a little bit. Chris Hudson on the highest of the high lines. Is he going to stay out of the wall? Just barely. And he's going to have the run to clear Matthew Long.
They are going to have the run indeed as he tries to clear him into turn 3. He does complete the pass, move Chris Hudson up, and he is really starting to set the pace here. He's ran one of the fastest laps out of the top 10 in this group as he is going to try to hunt down Acosta.
Now he's got to keep in touch with the private label team hype duo. It's entirely predictable that the two of them find each other up front and they run away from the rest of the field, but Chris Hudson wants to make sure that doesn't happen. He wants his second win in the PRL NASCAR Cup Series. A little bit out of shape off of 2, though. Matthew Long's not going anywhere. Chris Hudson's got to start looking forward, but he can't stop looking behind. Matthew Long's still there.
He certainly is. He's got to be careful to make sure he can come out with a strong run right here and try to keep the hungry Matthew Long into his inside, as we have also another pass about to form between drivers of Richard Reagan Jr. and James O'Brien. There you see the second screen behind as they make the run into turn 1.
The private label team hype finds himself 1 and 2. James O'Brien wants to make that 1-2-3 as Richard Reagan Jr. again a little bit out of shape off of 2. James O'Brien in one red and black car challenging for 5th. Matthew Long in the other red and black car challenging for 4th. There are so many red and black cars in this field. They're all moving their way forward, and they're all identifiable. That's sometimes a struggle in some series with cars that are similarly painted, but they're all different shades of red. James O'Brien is sort of the candy apple red. Matthew Long's a little bit darker. Josh Daniels is in a brighter red. I can tell them apart, I think.
You hope.
Sometimes.
Yeah, we try our best here at RaceSpotTV to tell apart all the drivers who are racing here as they work their way through. O'Brien, Richard Reagan Jr. throw in Joshua Daniels in the mix. There we see those three battle it out for the 5th position. 33 coming to lap 34 here in the books for our drivers as O'Brien tries to see if he can work the outside lane to get around Reagan.
Little bit of a peek, couldn't quite get there. Reagan, as always, a crafty driver, blocks off the top, doesn't let O'Brien get out there again. Off of 2, O'Brien's got the run, but he can't do anything with it. He tries to go for a Trent Dinkle-style crossover. He's barely got a nose to the inside, and he does get to the inside of Regan. He's clear before we even get to turn 4.
He's going to try to do so here and make his way through out of turn 4, move him up into the top 5 once again.
2 more drivers between him and his teammates are already going to war. Abner Acosta, the tire wizard. We've all noticed he was just hanging back. He was saving his stuff. While Trent Dinkle fought for the lead, Abner Acosta was studying the blade, and he's cut his way into the lead.
He certainly has, as he is now back out where he is definitely belongs, out of the front of the field right now as we watch those 2 teammates do battle. Keeping an eye on some other drivers who are working their way up through the field right now. Currently, no one's really been making big moves for the time being. Richard Pruitt has gained quite a few spots from 21st to 15th at the moment. And Aaron Beaver, 28th to 19th. So definitely some drivers who are on the move in this stage of the race.
Richard Pruitt has since fallen down to 18th, but still a great drive forward from the driver of the number 24, teammates with Mike Witt. There was sort of a mystery that was solved a couple of days ago. Richard Pruitt let us know that Mike Witt and him are both sponsored by Frito-Lay and that family of products and Pepsi, because Mike Witt actually works for Frito-Lay. That's a pretty good job. I'm going to try and maybe score some snacks and some drinks off of Mike Witt if he can get them for me off of the assembly line. But also, Richard Pruitt's primary sponsor, a company called Melendez Online Digital Consulting. It's a new company. It's a small company, but we always love seeing small companies represented in the PRL, giving them their airtime, and Richard Pruitt trying to make him proud as he fights with Aaron Beaver, into turn 3.
Side by side for position as they work their way through the middle of turn 3. You see Beaver trying to work that outside lane as he tries to do his best, but there you see the 24 machine of Richard Pruitt trying to keep pace as well as Beaver will slot back into the 19th spot.
It's always a good name to have in racing, Pruitt. Scott Pruitt, Marshall Pruitt, Leah Pruitt. It's a pretty good name to have. Of course, he's riding behind Byron Johnson, which might be an even better last name to have in racing, but you know, you can represent those names all you want.
Certainly can. I mean, think about it. It was, you know, for Byron Johnson, of course, the great Jimmy Johnson returning to NASCAR again in 2023. Yes, there you see Byron Johnson and the number 18 YS Motorsports Yellow Machine.
He's got two last names, actually. Byron Johnson.
Yeah, he certainly does. William Byron and Jimmy Johnson.
I'm trying to think, is there anybody else like that? I guess Elliott White on Wednesday night. He could be another one who's got two famous racing last names. These guys are greedy. One last name wasn't good enough for them.
Certainly agree with you on that one.
I'm just racking my brain if there's any other people with two last names. I don't think there are. I think it is just them two. Stephen Hassett has brought it down pit road this time. I don't know if he's gotten into the wall or if this is an early green flag pit stop, but this race has flown by. We're already almost a third of the way through. I think this is a scheduled green flag pit stop for Stephen Hassett on lap number 40. We're not to a third of the way through the race yet, so it might be a little bit early, but Stephen Hassett's going off strategy already.
He certainly is. He's already going to go one lap down, but we're going to keep track of his progress to see what he can do during this stage of the race. This will be exciting to kind of judge on how well Stephen Hassett and his Mopar machine will be able to do in these conditions.
James O'Brien still on the attack. He wants to join his teammates. Matthew Long, though, has the same idea, challenging Chris Hudson for third, but Chris Hudson, as always, rock solid, crispy, long peaks to the inside, but Hudson loves the outside on all of this track. He's going to hang on for P3 for the moment, but Matthew Long is putting the ultimate pressure on him.
He really is putting on the ultimate pressure and really trying to put a amazing drive during this stage of the race. He's going to try to do everything that he can in order to hold on for this position as they work their way through the middle of that. How about this? 3 wide, and it's going to get close indeed. Make sure you keep it clean, boys. And it's still going to be Chris Hudson who holds on.
Luckily, the momentum of Chris Hudson means we didn't go 3 wide into turn 3. I don't think that would have ended very well, but for a moment, every driver gave each other enough room. You can only go 3 wide so many times, though, before things start to come to blows. James O'Brien wants to break this battle up. Matthew Long wants to break this battle up. Somebody's got to get out of this hornet's nest.
Somebody does indeed, and so far no one's ready to get out just yet, as we see Chris Hudson really being one of the only few drivers to run right up against the wall and still make it work. So a great drive indeed. As we see now Matthew Long back to the inside, he's trying to get the momentum on his way to swing his way forward in order to try to get around, but not going to work this time.
I'm no TikTok enthusiast. I still don't have the app, but every time I see Chris Hudson's car, I think of a video I've seen reshared everywhere. It's grandma, she goes, "Have you ever had a Krispy Kreme? Was it crispy?" That's just been stuck in my head this whole time. And Chris Hudson has been crispy. It's a true fact. Every single lap, he's not gotten the wall in about 30 laps time, even with absolutely ripping the outside, even with absolutely ripping the safer barrier. He somehow got no damage on that car, and every single time Matthew Long tries to attack, it's almost for nothing. Hudson can't be broken.
Hudson indeed cannot be broken indeed, and he is going to continue to press his way forward in order to try to see if he can get that third spot away, but so far he will clear him, and now he will try to see if he has to watch out to throw the block on the momentum of Chris Hudson. Hudson tries to get to the back bumper. He is able to push the driver of Matthew Long down the back straightaway. Here comes, of course, another black and red machine. That is Joshua Daniels.
It never ends. It never ends. But Hudson swallowed up by James O'Brien now. I said he couldn't be broken, and I think I may have just jinxed himself. I think that may have been my jinx of the day, because he has been swallowed up by both drivers who are attacking him. James O'Brien's not done, though. He's going to try and peek to the inside of Matthew Long. He wants to make it private label team hype 1, 2, 3. Long's going to have the run on the outside, though.
Long is trying to do everything that he can to keep the driver of James O'Brien behind, but as they work their way through, Long keeping the outside momentum. Learned a thing or two probably from Chris Hudson, is trying to keep that outside lane going for him as they rocket off of turn 4.
Jay McDonald has also joined Byron McDonald, or joined Stephen Hassett, rather, on the alternate pit strategy. He came down a couple of laps ago. As I say that, Lou Christian down pit road as well. I'm trying to do the math in my head. 1/3 of 140 is not an even number, but I believe we are there now. On lap number 47, we're at a third of the race distance through. Lou Christian decides to come down pit road this time.
Interesting strategy call. Also, Jay McDonald came down pit road not too long ago as well, so things really starting to change.
Trent Dinkel's in from second.
Ooh, so this is really going to be spicy to see how this plays out amongst our top runners.
I don't think you can come close to making it to halfway. I don't think you can make it to lap 70, so you're going to have to do a two-stop if we do stay green here. But Trent Dinkel taking the risk here, going for the early stop. That's always the tough decision here on tracks like this. Do you go for the early stop? Do you go for the undercut and struggle later? Or do you go long on this run and have to make those passes on track later? Abner Acosta always seems to be the kind of driver who goes for the longer runs. He goes for the overcut. He's going to continue on, but Matthew Long's in, Chris Hudson's in, Daniels, Walter, Pat Harvey kills the cone. Half the field's down pit road this time.
The field is coming down pit road indeed. This is going to be exciting as now all the strategy plays are coming in as we see the rest of the field work their way through and see who is not going to be able to stay out there and who's going to try to make sure they don't get caught speeding.
Mark Kalen's off pit road, Ken Allen's off pit road, Clayton Ham, Chris Hudson, the race off pit road for him as Abner Acosta, your race leader, is down. Daniels is off. Long is off. Hudson's off. Hudson has been passed by Daniels. Long is going to beat Daniels off pit road as well. And here comes Trent Dinkel. You can see the effect of one lap of undercut. He's already going to blow by him.
He certainly is, and that's already going to show the case the speed that we're going to see Trent Dinkel and Matthew Long have over the rest of the field as now Abner Acosta is on pit road. Let's see if he's able to get out before Trent Dinkel comes around. So far, he's still on pit road. He's still going to go up on the jacks. Dinkel now coming out of turn number 4 and across the front straightaway here, I think is going to give the race lead, provisional race lead, over to Trent Dinkel since Acosta is not going to be able to get out there. You see Dinkel go around the outside.
A little bit of a bobble on the pit exit for Abner Acosta. This is a very awkward pit exit at Atlanta. It's very difficult because it's sort of banked. It goes up onto the banking of the track on the apron. Part of it's flat, part of it's banked. If you get it wrong, it's very easy to spin on pit exit. Abner Acosta saved it though. No trouble for him. The only trouble is Trent Dinkel's pulled a 2-second gap with a 1-lap undercut.
Well, not only that, Joey, but also when you have older tires, it's even more difficult to get down pit road because of the difficulties with the tires. You're slipping and sliding all over the place, so you have to be careful.
Matthew Campbell has stayed out. Jordan Slater has stayed out. Eric Papineau, Seminario, Richard Pruitt's in, so he's the last taker in the top 5. But the top 4 going for as long as possible, waiting for a potential caution to save them. But it's been very, very clean. It's been entirely green from the start of the race. I think they're going to be waiting a while for the caution to come out. I'm not going to jinx it. And here comes Matthew Campbell. He can't go any longer.
He is going to come down pit road here, and this will currently give the race lead over to Jordan Slater unless Slater decides to come down pit road. We'll see how that plays out for our competitors.
I think we've reached the hard end of the fuel tank, although Johan Seminario, clearly he's got a couple of extra laps of fuel, or maybe 1 extra lap of fuel in the tank, as Campbell, Papineau, and Slater all in on the same lap, and then there was one. Mr. Johan Seminario in the Dodge, only 9 seconds ahead of Trent Dinkel, so he's probably going to go a lap down, maybe even 2 laps down when he does eventually pit. But if the caution comes out between now and then, everything could change. Actually, if the caution comes out now, he's probably in a pretty bad situation because he might run out of fuel under caution. But he's still going for the alternate strategy. He's taking the risk, and he's going around again.
He certainly is. He's going to try to stretch it out for as long as possible, hoping maybe for a caution somewhere to keep him out on the track and keep a lot of people a lap down. So far, not going to work this time.
With how separated everybody is, you'd be really hard-pressed to get a caution here. It's early in the run. The tires are not worn yet. I don't think a caution is going to come for Seminario, unfortunately. This has been a strategy that's worked out at times this season. Brett Punkari led a late race restart at Darlington and got a top 12 for his efforts, doing a strategy like this a couple of weeks ago. And somehow Seminario still has fuel in the tank. I really thought the hard end of the tank was going to be about lap 52, 53, but clearly Seminario's been saving. He's still out there.
Certainly is. He's going to try to stretch it for as long as possible. He's got about a 5-second lead over Trent Dinkel.
Yeah, he's in danger, actually, if he stays out any longer, of being passed by Trent Dinkle on track. So there's only so much work you can do fuel saving. When you are on these aged tires, you're eventually going to get passed. He's still staying out on track, but in about a lap or two, he's going to get passed by Trent Dinkle anyway.
He certainly is, so it's just very much just trying to see if you can get out and make sure you do not end up behind pit road for sure. So we'll see how this plays out.
Oh, big drift off of turn 4. Seminario's tires are absolutely destroyed. He wants a caution, but he's got to make sure he isn't the caution. There goes Richard Pruitt. There goes Tom Amassi and Clayton Ham as well.
Straight away, 24 machine of Jose Medina.
Jose Medina's around. He's going to rejoin the track. Hopefully he can keep it pointed straight, so no caution, as Jose Medina is still pointed in a straight line. But Seminario is still out there. Unfortunately, Trent Dinkle is now in his sights, and this is likely going to be the last lap that Seminario gets the lead, because Dinkle, he's already caught him in the space of one corner.
He already is indeed here. We'll see how this plays out for our competitors as they continue to do battle here, as Dinkle will take over the race lead. Seminario really off the pace. Take this, 3 seconds off the pace right now.
If he needs to bring it down pit road this lap, he's going to be in danger because he's getting passed by all the private label team hype drivers. As we see what happened between Mike Witt and Jose the Funky Cold Medina. A little bit of argy-bargy off of turn 4. Gonna have to take another look at that, I think, but it looked like Witt just sort of put his nose where it didn't belong, or Jose Medina came down. Either way, 2 drivers hurting in the middle of the stint.
And very much hurting indeed here during the stage. We'll see how this plays out as we now pick up Trent Dinkle leading the way here at Atlanta.
Seminario still not coming down. Is he going to make it to halfway? Is he going to prove me wrong and go to lap 70, Taylor?
He's going to try his best to, I would have to say.
It's like there's no way that's physically possible, but I could be surprised. He's doing things I already didn't think were possible. What's 10 more laps?
What's 10 more laps indeed? He's going to try to stretch it for as long as possible here in this race and hopefully maybe get a caution, but unfortunately with how we're racing so far, it's been pretty clean and green.
James O'Brien's long run in the short term hasn't worked for him. There goes Taylor Stout back by him for P8. Remember, James O'Brien had driven his way up to 3rd before the pit cycle came around. Stayed out for a couple of extra laps compared to everybody else, though, and the effects are apparent as he's lost 6 spots to Long, Daniels, Hudson, Christian, and to Taylor Stout. Now, Seminario will eventually come down pit road, we think, theoretically, if physics are anything to go by, but it hasn't happened yet. Up front, though, Dinkle and Acosta, even with their 1-lap difference, they found each other again. The fight's back on between private label team hype.
It is going to be back on indeed here. We're going to see this action really kick off into overdrive amongst the competitors as they continue to do battle here. Watching on Trent Dinkle, 0.4 of a second and losing some time on his competitors.
Phil Kraus in the chat cheering on his teammates, Dinkle and Acosta, his intra-stable teammates, I should say. Private label team hype representing in the chat. Clayton Ham letting everybody by. He did pit on basically the same strategy as the rest of these drivers, but it's been a little bit of a struggle tonight for Clayton Ham. He's gone a lap down. He's hoping that caution comes home soon as well, so he can get the wave around and get a lucky dog, get himself back on the lead lap. But for now, it's a struggle.
About Philip Kraus picking up the Lionheart Open Wheels Championship last year in 2022.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous season that I think may never be recreated. A podium in every single race but the last one. It was an incredible season in Lionheart last season, and the thing that made the difference, I think, Taylor, is the one race he wasn't on the podium. That was the one race I was in the booth, so it's all my fault.
Well, hopefully that won't happen again for him when he tries to compete in 2023.
Matthew Campbell was one of the first drivers to come down, if I remember correctly, under the last pit cycle. Still kind of struggling in the middle of the field, though. Currently sits P24. But this is what's important about Matt Campbell. We have the Matt Campbell cam in the dungeon, in the war room. Got a nice table in the background. There's either a very small laptop or a phone with a display, sort of old-fashioned. It's got the gloves. He's got the headphones, he's got the beautiful beard. Look at Matt Campbell. Good stuff.
He's going for it.
Everybody's got to submit their cameras. We've got so many characters that return to us on Sunday nights. We've got Mark Kalin, we've got the world's shortest staircase with Luke Christian, we got Trent Dinkle in his blank white room. Now we've got good old Matt R.D. Campbell representing Aero Kinetics. Get the whole field in, get the whole team in.
As well, it's always great to do this for drivers here, and we stress it always because it allows us to showcase the drivers. That's what we are here to do, is showcase all the drivers.
Johan Seminario, going to continue to showcase him, has finally come down pit road, but Abner Acosta for the lead. Peeks to the inside of his teammate. He's not quite clear through 3 and 4. Now he is off of turn 4. Acosta clears his teammate. And for the first time in a couple of laps, Abner Acosta's retaken the lead. But look who's right behind. Matthew Long not letting these guys go. All separated by 1 lap of tire life. Acosta on 16-lap-old tires. Long on 17. Dinkle on 18. Put a blanket over the whole top 3.
It really is, and those 1 lap difference of tires is going to come into handy for Acosta as the run progresses during this race.
How about these for the primary colors? Yellow, blue, and red. Which primary color is going to win? It's up to you to decide. Or is it cyan and magenta? I don't think so.
One way to find out here as they work their way through. A couple of laps away from the halfway point.
These guys have absolutely checked out from the rest of the field. Who else has arrived in 4th and 5th other than Josh Daniels and Chris Hudson? Every single week we look back, there's a fight for the win, and then there's the 2 stalwarts of the PRL, the 2 most consistent drivers in this series, still sitting back there in 4th and 5th, right next to each other. They find each other on track every week. They're kind of hoping those top 3 take each other out. They're going to fight over 4th and 5th for their own right, because as every single week, Josh Daniels and Chris Hudson get to fight for track position.
They certainly are going to fight for track position right here, and they are going to continue to do so. There you see the Krispy Kreme machine of Chris Hudson putting on a stellar drive during this stage of the race.
Clayton Ham still struggling on the outside, but Chris Hudson putting all the pressure on. Josh Daniels went for the undercut, one of the earlier drivers to come in. Hudson waited an extra lap or 2, if I remember correctly. Actually, they pitted on the same lap, so ignore me. I think it was just a sequence of Josh Daniels being a little bit further ahead in the on pit road. They found each other again. Same tire age, same pace generally in the PRL. Talked about unstoppable objects. The caution is out as we approach halfway, and it's Abner Acosta from the lead of the race, potentially. No, that was an internet disconnection. That was a false alarm. Abner Acosta still in the race, but who is the caution? Who was the cause? Looking back in the field, Jose Medina may be a culprit, potentially. Johan Seminario on fresher tires than the rest of the field after stretching it for the ultimate time to the inside of Mike Witt.
Ooh.
And to the door of Mike Witt.
Tough break for both those competitors as we cross the halfway point.
Seminario really went for that alternate strategy, but those new tires, I think, might have caught him out there. I think he may have approached the side of Mike Witt a little bit faster than he was expecting to. And for the second time tonight, Mike Witt, unfortunately, involved in an accident, and he's going to get even heavier damage from that contact with the wall. But we're at halfway point. We're at the halfway point in the race right now. Question is, do you come down pit road this time? It's been a 20-lap stint. It's been a pretty long run, but there's still 70 laps to go to the end.
There certainly is still 70 laps to go, and a lot of things can happen between now and the checkered flag, and it's safe to say everybody's coming down pit road.
Here we go. The whole field is in. A couple drivers staying out to get the wave round, understandably, but everybody on the lead lap. Acosta, Dinkle, Long, Daniels, Hudson, Stout, O'Brien, and the rest of the gang. And now it's a question, who's been paying their virtual pit crews the most? Is it Private Label Team Hype? Is it Dirty South Racing? Is it Love Racing? Who is the best virtual pit crew in the business? Everybody makes their stall. Nobody overcooks it. Kind of typical for Private Label Team Hype, but these guys in the Cup Series, they know what they're doing. Trent Dinkle on the jacks, Acosta on the jacks. Looks like Trent Dinkle will be able to beat his teammate off of pit road. Potentially, no, it's Acosta who beats Dinkle off. Long gets second as well, so Private Label Team Hype have been split. Matthew Long finds himself in the middle of the teammates.
He certainly has found himself in the middle. We'll see how this will play out for him as these runs are about to progress through, as we now have a 70-lap dash to the finish.
Clayton Ham is going to be a very happy driver. He's been waved back onto the lead lap, as has Charles Sumner. No, Charles Sumner's only got one of his laps back. Mark Kalin on the lead lap. Jose Medina on the lead lap. Lots of organization to do. But unlike at the 24 Hours of Daytona a couple of days ago, Taylor, it's not going to take us 20 minutes to organize the field.
Thankfully, no. We're going to be able to go back racing here momentarily.
Get all the classes back in order here. All the GTD next gens. Get them at the back of the field. We're all good here. Steven Hassett comes down pit road again. Mike Witt, understandably, going to come down pit road again to get some more damage fixed. But we do get ready to restart here in a couple of laps' time. Abner Acosta wins the race off pit road. His teammate not quite so lucky. Acosta also survives sort of an internet scare. We've seen some troubles with that in the past couple of races in the PRL. There's been some drivers who, unfortunately, have come at the behest of their internet service providers and been kicked out of the session from good positions. I already scared Phil Kraus enough in the chat, but I have to imagine Abner Acosta was probably pretty scared when he blinked when the caution came out.
He certainly did indeed here. But speaking of course, like you said, the multiple classes racing, and like we saw at Le Mans, how about the big announcement of the NASCAR team racing at Le Mans in 2023 with Jimmy Johnson, along with Mike Rockenfeller and Jenson Button? Talk about a championship-winning team.
It's basically as good as you can ask for a lineup. We heard from NASCAR president Steve Phelps on the broadcast yesterday. He was like, it's not a next-gen car. It's not a next-gen car. It's a Garage 56 NASCAR prototype, but it is inspired by the next-gen car. It is far more similar to the cars you're seeing on track right now than it is to, say, a GT3 car or a GTE car or a prototype or whatever. It is NASCAR being represented at Le Mans for the first time in many, many, many years. I can't wait for the summer to be here to see that.
You have to go all the way back to the 1970s when that happened for NASCAR. So, really going to be excited to see this happening in the new age, and it's going to be interesting to see how the likes of Jimmy Johnson and Jenson Button and Mike Rockenfeller will be able to do that here, as they will be ready and excited battle at Le Mans, because they're going for overall. They're not going to go for just a class or just run around. They're going to go there and fight.
I'm thinking that when we have one of those open weeks for a NASCAR off week on the iRacing schedule, Le Mans. That's going to be the series we have to go to in the official series in these cars.
I have to agree.
I don't know how much participation we'd get at the Circuit de la Sarthe, but I want to see a PRL race in the French countryside. I think Abner Acosta probably wants to see that too. Richard Regan Jr., sports car racing for Precision Racing Esports. He was there in the M-Tech event a couple of weeks ago, so would definitely be happy about a Le Mans choice there. But we're ready to go racing once more here at Atlanta. The first caution of the night, and potentially the only caution of the night at halfway. Everybody on new tires. Everybody's fresh and ready. The iRacing Stand Pace car pulls onto pit road for the second time tonight. And for the first time tonight, it's Abner Acosta in control of the restart. We're green again at Atlanta.
How about the jump right there by Acosta and Trent Dinkle? Matthew Long slides down to the bottom of the racetrack as they set themselves up heading into turn one.
It's always synced up at Private Label Team Hype. They know how to restart over there. Josh Daniels going for a restart of his own to the outside of James O'Brien, swallows him up, and once again finds his old buddy Chris Hudson in the fight for fourth.
He certainly does, and he tries to get himself set up for a decent run here as Regan Jr. as well as also the rest of the field do battle here in amongst the top 10 as they head down the front straightaway. How about Brandon Walters now breaking into the top 10 for the first time tonight?
Brandon Walter always just slowly but surely moving his way forward. He heard our compliments to his teammates Acosta and Dinkle and O'Brien, and the caution is out again, and it's Richard Pruitt around in 1 and 2 all the way around. Have to imagine he got a little bit of help, potentially Matthew R.D. Campbell, who's fallen down the order. Not sure what happened there, but Richard Pruitt was having a good run up from his grid spot, up from 25th place. It's not over yet, but it is certainly taken a hit as we try to diagnose what happened to Mr. Richard Pruitt. He knows what happened, though. He's in the wall. He's got damage. Here it is. That's Jay McDonald, who is inside, but I don't think Richard Pruitt was quite clear there.
He was not clear indeed, and unfortunately for them, that's going to put them in a little bit of a difficult situation.
Yeah, that was Ken Holland as well, who came on the scene. Absolutely nowhere to go. And poor old Ken, unfortunately, takes a bite out of an incident that he had nothing to do with. But the caution's back out. We had a very, very short run, so not much has changed. And this is when the tension starts to build. It's always a cliche that cautions breed cautions, and sometimes it is true, but especially up front, when you're constantly restarting and restarting and restarting, you start losing time to make those moves. The pressure starts to build.
Certainly does start to build indeed, and we're going to see this really come into play here as we're going to see who is going to be able to survive this stage of the race as we progress further and further deeper into this run.
Taylor Stout has elected to come back down pit road. Robert Besaw Jr.'s down pit road, as are McDonald, which is kind of understandable. He might have a little bit of damage. Mark Kalin, the damaged Ken Holland, and then from the lead lap as well, Brett Punkari and Richard Regan Jr. We had basically a half a lap run there, but some drivers from the middle of the field electing to bring it down pit road again. I think they can... Actually, I just did some math in my head. They think they can make it to the end. 63 laps to go. That's shorter than what Johan Seminario did. Taylor Stout has left a spot in the middle of the top 10, but he's going to the end.
He's going to try to go to the end. This is going to be exciting to see how this will play out.
But I also think that with the amount of laps we've run under caution, the restart was on what, lap 75? It's going to be really, really difficult to make it to the end, even with those drivers who pitted, unless they're doing some extreme Seminario fuel saving. They're dicey to make it to the end. I think the guys who stayed out are going to be in even more danger making it to the end. I don't know if it's possible.
I don't know if it's possible either, but it's going to be exciting to see if they could pull it off, but it's going to be a hard battle indeed.
And do you hope for the caution, or do you instantly start going fuel save mode? That's a decision that every single driver who stayed out all the way back to P19 has to start thinking about right now, or else they're not going to be able to save enough fuel.
You have to go for fuel saving mode indeed, because if you don't, you're in trouble as is, because even though we had 2 back-to-back cautions, you have to be prepared.
Lights will be out on the iRacing sedan pace car in 2 more laps time, and suddenly we find ourselves in a fuel mileage race. This is what the PRL NASCAR Cup Series gives us with these longer races on Sunday night. It's not a sprint race. It's not an official series race. It is a full-length race with all the strategy possibilities, and somehow it's not scripted, but every single time it feels like it might be, because we end up with some of the most fascinating strategies and some of the most fascinating developments. We have no idea what's going to happen in the next 45 minutes.
We certainly don't, and that's what makes it exciting.
So your top 10 has been shuffled a little bit. Abner Acosta, Trent Dinkel, Matthew Long, Chris Hudson, Daniels, O'Brien, Christian, and Walter. The same as they were, but Jeff Chandler's been promoted up to P9, and Waldo Walden, who qualified in the top 10, is back in the top 10. This has been the run of the season for Waldo Walden, another driver who has been around for a couple of seasons, spent his time, did his dues at kind of the back of the field, but last season showed quite a bit of improvement, and this season, he's been in the top 10 on pace.
He certainly has, and he is definitely going to be a man on the mission here during this stage of the race as we see them doubled up. Lights are out. It's time to go back racing here.
It's a question of sport, and it's a question of fuel. Can the drivers who stayed out here make it to the end of the race? The drivers who pitted under this caution, they definitely think they can make it. With the fuel saving they're able to do under caution, with the fuel saving they'll hopefully be able to do under green, the likes of Taylor Stout, Robert Besaw Jr., Mark Kalin, Jay McDonald, Brett Punkari, and Richard Regan Jr. all want to go to the end of this race with no more stops. All the drivers ahead of them, they want to do the same thing, but they're going to have much more trouble doing so. With some extra laps on the tank, some extra fuel spent, but Abner Acosta and Trent Dinkel up at the front of the field. They're not thinking about fuel right now. They're thinking about holding this lead, and they're thinking about organizing this start. Because private label team hype, especially these two, when they find each other at the front of the field on these restarts, they know how to get in line together. Abner Acosta and Trent Dinkel, fantastic at organizing, likely in the same Discord call together, telling each other, here's what I'm going to do on the restart, here's how I'm going to get you in line. It worked to their advantage last time out, and we're going to see if they can do it again. The iRacing sedan pace car pulls onto pit road once more. Abner Acosta takes control of the field. There's the jump, and Trent Dinkel's going to slot in line behind him.
They certainly are. This is going to get exciting here as now Acosta leads the charge. He's going to be the Pied Piper as he works his way through the middle of turn 1 and 2.
Chris Hudson on the high line, trying to break up the Matthew Long party in the top 3, not able to do it. O'Brien and Josh Daniels side by side. O'Brien spent long enough making the moves to get up to his teammates in the last run. But he knows he needs to get some better short run speed here. Daniels clips the apron a little bit. He's going to be able to hold on to P5 though.
Holding on here as he tries to get the run he needs on the outside. Brandon Walter's not too far behind as they set themselves up for a beautiful drive turn in the stage.
Daniels still holding, but James O'Brien not going anywhere. His teammate Brandon Walter as well continues his drive forward. Brandon Walter versus Lou Christian for P7. Brandon Walter from one of the last qualifying spots on the grid, one of the last drivers to set a qualifying lap time. Suddenly he sees his third teammate right ahead of him. Unfortunately, he sees Lou Christian to his outside as well, who's going to be a tough customer.
He is going to be a tough customer indeed, so this is going to be a little bit difficult for some of the competitors as they try to set themselves up here. Single file amongst the top 3 during this stage, as we see Chris Hudson and Josh Daniels with a fresh set of tires. They want to try to see what they can do as they try to progress further up the field.
Jordan Slater up in the top 10 for the first time this season as well. He's kind of gone under the radar. In the first stint, didn't really show us much, but look at Jordan Slater on the high side, to the outside of Christian, to the outside of James O'Brien. Jordan Slater looks to the top 5 for Aerokinetics.
He's really going to try to put on a straight drive here. That Aerokinetics machine is really, this is the best run we've seen them all season, I would have to say, at least with me coming on and watching these races. So that purple and silver machine really putting on a stellar drive.
And look at Daniels as well, to the outside, swallowing up Chris Hudson. The outside seems like it might be the place to be in the short run, although the drivers on the bottom may be saving fuel as well. So Josh Daniels doing some spectacular things on the outside. He just passed 3 cars in 3 and 4. Josh Daniels is going for the lead to the outside of Abner Acosta.
And he's not done yet. He's going to continue on with this battle here for the race lead. He will clear Acosta out of turn 2. Here comes Matthew Long in the mix.
If I had a theory, I would say that Josh Daniels is not saving a thing. He's not saving tires and fuel. Private label team hype drivers have other ideas, but for right now, it looks spectacular as Daniels blows around the outside. Matthew Long's going to join him. Jordan Slater's trying to join him as well, but he's getting blocked off by Trent Dinkle.
He really is. He's got to be careful with that, with all the blocking happening during this stage of the race. As there to the inside, Matthew Long puts on the pressure. He wants to try to take back the race lead.
It was fun while it lasted for Josh Daniels, but his short time in the lead has been broken up by the driver who's won the last 3 races in this series. He's won 75% of the races this season. It's very rare to go 4 in a row in the PRL on the oval side. But Matthew Long, he's been collecting the records. He wants another one.
He wants another one, and he's going to do his best to do so here. And a great opportunity to do that as they work their way through the middle of the corner. Great drive by Matthew Long as he looks for win number 4.
Mark Kalin moving forward, Jeff Chandler moving forward. Things have started to go single file mode for the moment. Chris Hudson trying to change that. Brandon Walter trying to change that as well. Waldo Walden versus Brandon Walter. Walter Walden, Walter Walden. Don't try to say that 10 times fast.
With that, we'll see Walter complete the pass and move ahead of Walden.
And look at Roy Grande as well. It's an absolute Aerokinetics party up here. Slater moving forward, Campbell moving forward. I don't think Roy Grande has been this high in the field all season long. The 11 sits P11.
He certainly is, and he is definitely running a great drive indeed. In fact, last time by, he was about a 1/10 of a second faster than the 2 drivers up ahead of him, Waldo Walden and James O'Brien.
By the way, bad news for fans of Charles Sumner. Just got an update that he got a speeding penalty a couple of laps ago, so he was, or a couple of cautions ago, actually, so that's why he's 1 lap down. He might come back into the fray here if we get another caution, which might just come from this Hornet's Nest. There's been absolute craziness in the middle of the field. Now Mark Kalin, remember, he is on slightly newer rubber than the rest of the field. We did only get about 1 lap of green flag running between when Mark Kalin pitted and between when the drivers ahead of him pitted, but he's still trying to take advantage of slightly newer tires. He's clipping the apron coming into turn 3, and he's scaring Waldo Walden out of P12.
He certainly is. He's got to be careful with that run here as they continue to do battle. To the outside, Walter trying to get around Walden as we see Mark Kalin getting into the picture here, looking for his best drive of the night so far.
See Richard Regan Jr. in the background as well, trying to come back from something that I don't actually remember. I don't remember why Richard Regan Jr. is so deep in the field, but bad luck has struck once again for Richard Regan Jr. He finds himself with a mountain to climb. He finds himself with a wall in front of him with Mark Kalin and Lou Christian, and there is the always present Mark Kalin on board. Terry's not here to complain about the flag or the college representation, but Mark Kalin still representing Kentucky and representing drivers who like to get the rear out on turn 2.
And also representing Terry Labonte. How about that in the background, too?
And the Cheez-Its and the
Star Wars. You see the
yeah, I'm gonna embarrass myself because I've never seen a single Star Wars movie. I don't remember what ship that is.
Imperial Star Destroyer. And for all
Okay,
of you who can roast Joey, begin now.
I don't know if I'm ever gonna watch those movies. At this point, it's been so long that I don't even know if I can break the streak.
But now's a good time more than ever. Find yourself a nice rainy day and have at it.
That is possible. Maybe if there's a Star War outside, I'll be locked in the house. I'll be forced to watch. I did notice something on the last lap, though. Mark Kalin stuck his hand through the wheel off of turn 4. I don't know if he was resting his hands on the straight, though, because there is a little bit of a delay with the zoom, but I've never seen somebody do that before. Mark Kalin's trying to take a rest in the middle of this race.
You don't want to be resting during green flag conditions, I would have to say, as you are really having to put the hammer down and have to be sawing on that wheel, as there's a big slide for Mark Kalin. He knows we're talking about him.
I think he may have actually been pressing push to talk, but, you know, it's my chance to make fun of Mark Kalin, so you got to go for it.
You certainly have to indeed here, and he is going to hold on for dear life in this race.
Off of turn 2, off of turn 4, every single lap. If Mark Kalin was trying to save fuel to make it to the end of the race, if he was trying to save tires to make it to the end of the race, he's certainly struggling to do so as he almost gets into the wall. Aaron Beaver gets to his inside. Not for position, though. Beaver still a lap down, and Kalin's still getting into the wall.
Kalin needs to be careful with that, getting into the wall. It's going to cause more problems for him. Gotta back it off a little bit here. The tires are starting to really fall off the pace. We're already anywhere between a second to almost 0.4 of a second between, at least for fall off right now.
That was for position, by the way. Aaron Beaver not a lap down. He's just moving his way forward in the field so quickly that I kind of lost touch where he was. Beaver now looks to Lou Christian and Roy Grande. Beaver's not done, and there's just absolute argy-bargy festivals ahead of Mark Kalin, who's losing it himself, and he almost takes Jeff Chandler with him.
Hold on, Marky. You gotta make sure you bring it home in one piece, and he is gonna try to do so as these drivers battle it out here in the closing stages of the race.
It's tough, though, because when you overheat the rear tires, especially at a place like this, you kind of end up in the endless cycle. Mark Kalin does this sometimes, where he does start getting a little bit loose. He starts to have a loose moment off the same corner every single lap, and the straights here are so short and so curved at times that it's hard to break the cycle. He's gotten back in line that time. He's gotten things back under control, but it's very, very difficult, especially on a day like today where it's 107 degrees on the track still.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best condition for these drivers during the stage of the race. You've got to be so careful with it and definitely have to hold on for dear life. And once you already burn up the tires, it's pretty much game over until the caution or you come down pit road.
Also, we've heard from our intrepid pit reporter, our intrepid whistleblower, Nicholas Hunter. Richard Regan Jr. actually got the penalty for an unsafe pit entry, so he went from P3 to P30. That's why he'd fallen so deep in the field. We've almost forgotten, though, because he's already back into the top 10. That's up 20 spots since his penalty. He's not done. He's got a pair of private label team hype shish kebabs ahead.
He certainly does. He's got to try to find his way around quickly in order to try to work his way further into the top 10 to have a shot of a podium or maybe even further.
Richard Regan Jr. dirty south on the dirty outside, but he's going to be clear. Brandon Walter has been swallowed up by the train here. Regan's up. Walter's back. Lou Christian now peeks to the inside of Brandon Walter. Not going to be able to do anything with that, though. And Aaron Beaver joins the fray as well in P12. This is a shaken up field here, really. A lot of drivers we don't normally see fighting in the top 10 and the top 12. They've all got their shot here with this mixed up strategy.
Yeah, really, a lot of things are happening with this strategy here, and they have to be so careful with this amazing battle we're watching as they try to work their way down the back straightaway. A couple of cars sprawled out all the way down to the bottom of the white line. That's Matthew Campbell who's trying to stay out of harm's way.
Matthew Campbell making those spectacular moves around the outside, going for the lead. Well, unfortunately, he's going to bring it down pit road this time. He doesn't think he can make it to the end, so he's going for an early stop here, potentially an undercut. If we go green, Matthew Campbell's really hoping that happens. He's going for an alternate strategy already with 41 laps to go.
Best time to do it now instead of waiting to the last possible second in order to come out with the race win. So he's going to see what he can do as they work their way down on the pit road. Campbell just making sure everything looks good. He will be released momentarily. And with 40 laps to go, he's got 1 lap to make up here in the process.
He's just desperately hoping that everybody who's able to stay out has to pit, because if that doesn't happen, Matthew Campbell's strategy is all for naught. But Matthew Long, Trent Dinkle, Josh Daniels, Abner Acosta, basically everybody back to P10. Richard Regan Jr. is the first driver who pitted under that last caution. He's the first driver who's likely safe to make it to the end based on what Johan Seminario did. Everybody else, though, still needs to think about saving a little bit of fuel. It certainly hasn't looked like drivers were saving fuel, especially in the case of Matthew Long and Josh Daniels. But Trent Dinkle, who rides in second right now, he probably has the ability to save some fuel right now in the draft.
He certainly has that opportunity, but can he make it work? As I don't know if we reported that Roy Grande is now taking it behind the wall. His night is done, a tough break for him. But as we watch on this battle for the race lead, Trent Dinkle, will he determine to stay out as long as possible, or will he consider coming down pit road before this race is over?
Behind these two, Abner Acosta and Josh Daniels going for a fight as well. Private label team hype. Maybe they think they've saved enough fuel. They're sick of running second and fourth. They want to take their first and second back. Here comes Abner to the inside of Daniels. He doesn't even need the full 1 and 2 to clear Daniels. He's already clear. The Tire Wizard's been saving, and he's up to third. And here comes Trent Dinkle to the inside of Matthew Long.
Inside, and he's going to try to power his way through with his Chevrolet and has a great run, but not able to make it stick as they come out of turn number 4 side by side for the race lead. Acosta in the catbird seat.
Looks very, very familiar, doesn't it? Dinkle versus Long for the lead of this race. Dinkle's got to get back in line, but can he go for his famous crossover here? He doesn't need to, because Long is already using that higher line. Dinkle using the bottom to his advantage, using likely fresher tires to his advantage. Still not able to get to the inside or the outside of Matthew Long. He's going to slot back in line. He's going to wait another lap for another chance.
He is going to wait another lap here and try to see what he can recover with and try to see if he can capitalize on making a different strategy call as they come across the line here. Looks to the inside, shows the nose, but thinks better of it. He's going to stay tucked up behind. Now thinks about going half a lane higher than Matthew Long as Acosta sticks to the bottom.
That was the first attempt at the Dinkle crossover here. He's trying something different, but something different is something he's done before. Worked for him to get to the back of Long. Doesn't work for him to get to the inside of Long. Still has to slot back into second. There's only 36 laps left to go here. If you're thinking about fuel, you're definitely going to have to think about that, but you've got to start thinking about making your moves here. And Dinkle does finally get to the inside of Long. A little bit of a bobble opens the door. Here comes Dinkle to the inside.
The only driver who really might not have to worry about fuel is Richard Regan Jr. He has 27 laps on this stint here. Now, depending on if he just took fuel only, that could be a big help for him, as he will have to work his way through the field compared to the rest of the drivers who have to pit for fuel and tires. So we'll see if this plays out, but still a lot of strategy to come into play.
Trouble for Byron Johnson a little bit further in the field. He's recovered, but he's lost 3 spots in the process, and that's because he's brought it down pit road. Matthew Long to the inside of Trent Dinkle for the race lead, though. It's an attack, but it's not going to win him anything. To the inside, just chopped himself off, pinched his momentum. That's going to allow Abner Acosta now to get to the inside, and Private Label Team Hype finds themselves 1 and 2 in the race. But Byron Johnson and Clayton Ham, 2 drivers for YS Motorsports, they think they can't make it to the end. Matthew Long and Josh Daniels, they agree. These drivers who stayed out think they can't make it to the end, and they're going to bring it down pit road.
Now the question is going to be, what are they going to do? Are they going to take tires and fuel, or they are just going to take fuel in order to see if they can try and make it to the end and utilize the tires that they have, as the 2 race leaders will battle for position. We'll keep an eye and see what Daniels and Long will do. They go up on the jacks. They're getting fresh tires.
With 33 laps left to go, you got to think that we're currently running 2 seconds a lap slower, or about 1.5 seconds a lap slower if you're Acosta and Dinkel, than the fastest time. So even if Acosta and Dinkel can make it to the end, with the fresher tires, Long and Daniels might have enough time to make it back up there and make the pass.
They certainly do have enough time to make it work, but the problem is, will they be able to get through quickly all the traffic they have to fight their way through in order to get that position? Plus also the possibility of cautions, which could change the entire outlook of the game, because they are currently right now not the first car one lap down, as we see Acosta come down pit road.
Mark Kalin, Charles Sumner, and Brandon Walter, who all pitted, I believe, under the last caution. Brandon Walter didn't, but Mark Kalin and Charles Sumner did. They think they can make it to the line on fuel, but if they're only making it to the line with that 1 extra lap of fuel, you have to imagine that Dinkel, Hudson, and the like are going to be 1 lap short. Acosta agrees. He brings it down pit road. Look at Matthew Long in traffic right now, trying to take advantage of those fresh tires, but he can't take advantage of fresh tires when he's getting clogged up by Jeff Chandler.
And that's a detriment for him, because if he's staying tucked up behind too many drivers for so long, that will actually cause more wear and tear on his tires. So he's got to pick and choose when to make the passes, but do them quickly as Acosta now exits off pit road.
See the effect of fresh tires on the left side of your screen with Long around the outside, and on the right side, Abner Acosta exits pit road. Again, on that tricky pit exit, but Abner's got it under control. Where is he going to blend with his teammate Trent Dinkel? Has he gone a lap down? Yes, he has. He is a lap down. So if we get a caution, Abner Acosta may be in trouble here. Here comes Matthew Long and his teammate Richard Regan Jr., who opens the door. Matthew Long's definitely going to lead this race once or if Trent Dinkel and Chris Hudson pit. But that's the question. Will they? Can Dinkel and Hudson go to the end? Can Walden go to the end? There's still 7 drivers in the top 8 right now that might be trying to go to the end.
There certainly are, as we watch on Trent Dinkel, who is currently your race leader, trying to still put other cars a lap down, or multiple laps down. There you see the 28 of Matthew Long, though. He's going to try to unlap himself here. He'll go around the outside to get back on the lead lap. Now it is game time. Under 30 laps left for him to go and catch up to Trent Dinkel.
And I did misspeak. It's not 7 out of 8 drivers in the top 8 who are trying to make it to the end of the race. The 8th driver is Richard Regan Jr., who likely can make it to the end of the race. If the likes of Mark Kalin and Charles Sumner are correct, if he's been saving fuel like they have, Richard Regan Jr. can just barely make it to the end. But has Dinkel been able to save the fuel? Has Hudson been able to save the fuel? Has anybody else in the top 8 been able to save that same fuel? You have to imagine that Dinkel thinks he can, because if he wasn't able to make it to the end, he would definitely not be putting himself at risk here from the undercut from Abner Acosta. He's been out for so many more laps. Acosta and Long would have him absolutely destroyed if he pitted now. He's definitely got to be committed to the end.
He has to be, as we see a couple of other drivers who have also could make it to the end. You have Taylor Stout, Pat Harvey, Robert Beatsaw Jr., Brent Pancari, Scotty Johnson, Mark Kalin, we touched on already as one of those ones who could make it to the end.
Jeff Chandler is in. He's a taker from the top 8. He doesn't think he can make it to the end. He comes down to put fresh tires on with 26 laps left to go. That's interesting, Taylor. That's the first taker from the top 8. Is anybody else going to blink?
See here indeed as this run progresses. So far, Trent Dinkel has yet to come down pit road. Chris Hudson has caught up to Trent Dinkel too. So this could be a battle for the race lead as well.
Has Trent Dinkel been doing some extra saving? Has Chris Hudson saved all he needs? Things getting very interesting up front here. Here's Abner Acosta on those fresher tires. Here's a physical demonstration of the differences in the tire ages. Acosta blows by his teammate Trent Dinkel to get back on the lead lap. And now you got to do the math in your head. 25 laps left to go. Abner Acosta just ran a 31.5. Trent Dinkel just ran a 33.5. That's a 2-second difference. If that pace keeps up, which it won't because Acosta will fall off, he could catch Trent Dinkel before the end of this race.
He certainly can, but he's got to make sure he makes those passes cleanly and quickly, just like same thing with Matthew Long. If you don't make those passes quickly and cleanly, you will run into more problems and get blocked up and lose time on your competitors. Plus, really put a hammering on your tires as well. Right now, he just ran 31.6 the last time by, 2 seconds faster than your race leader.
Chris Hudson opens the door for Matthew R.D. Campbell. It's It does look like an IMSA race now, Taylor. I joked about how it really doesn't before, but now it does. With so many drivers on different strategies, with the differently aged tires, it's a multi-class race at this point.
It really is here, and we're going to keep a track of all the action and making sure we see who comes out with the better strategy right now. Trent Dinkle, his bed's pretty much made. He cannot afford to come down pit road unless he runs out of fuel. Same thing with Chris Hudson. Richard Reagan Jr. really is in the catbird seat right now.
This is endurance racing at this very moment. I'm not going to do John Hindhoff impression, but I've heard his voice plenty over the last 2 days. And this is turning into an endurance race at Atlanta. We always knew this place to be tough. We always knew this place to be exhausting for the drivers. It exhausts the tires. It exhausts the fuel, frankly. But this has turned into an endurance race, and Trent Dinkle and Chris Hudson, they're hoping that they're the overall winners.
They're going to see what they can do. Currently, the gap between your race leader and Matthew Long, 18 seconds and closing.
Can take a look back at Matthew Long because he is making progress. Only 18 seconds up to Trent Dinkle now. He just passed Ken Olin. Next up on his list is Mark Kalin. That should be fairly easy pickings. A very good thing for Matthew Long, rather, is that he's not really running into packs of drivers. He's running into individual drivers. With how the strategy is stratified here, he can just make individual passes as Chris Hudson tries to go for an individual pass of his own. He's actually going to block up Jose the Funky Cold Medina on newer tires. But Chris Hudson trying to break up the Trent Dinkle party. He wants to lead this race and hope that he's the one who can hang on.
Oh, that's going to be a little bit difficult right there because you're really utilizing a lot of tire wear right there with those two battling. I think Dinkle realizes that, and he doesn't want to use up his tires too much as he lets Jose Medina by, and now Chris Hudson leads the way here at Atlanta. Big slide a little further back from one of the competitors.
Some great patience exhibited there by Jose Medina, just waiting for the two up front to figure out their own problems, let the leaders fight, and then once they figured that out, Jose Medina on those fresh tires easily blows by both of them. These two are struggling. They're racing against the clock, basically, and right now, things don't look too good for him. Matthew Long on that last lap was still 2 seconds faster than these two. He's only 14 seconds behind with 2 seconds to go. Dinkle and Hudson still going to try and fight with each other, but they're fighting against a chasing Matthew Long.
Make it 13.9 seconds and closing.
Next up on Long's list is Scotty Johnson. Again, just a driver on his own, not really fighting with anybody. That'll be an easy move. Then Eric Papineau, 4 seconds up the road. Then Brett Pancari, a further 1.5 seconds up the road. It is a perfect opportunity for Matthew Long here. He's basically got clean track with a couple of chicanes in it. Unfortunately, this is the kind of thing he's going to run into a little bit later on in the run.
And which will make it a little bit difficult for him as Matthew Long does get around Scotty Johnson. Now he's got to pick up another 3 seconds to catch up to Eric Papineau and Brett Pancari.
This is scary if you're Hudson and Dinkle. You're 3 wide with a pack of drivers who are all on fresh tires. Jay McDonald to the inside, Richard Pruitt to the outside, and Trent Dinkle. The meat in that sandwich does survive, but that was definitely a sweaty moment for Trent Dinkle as all of these drivers blow by. Here comes Mike Witt joining his teammate Richard Pruitt as well. It's very, very rare that you see a true demonstration of tire wear as explicit as this.
Tire wear and handling here as we watch on through the field. We see the 24 machine of Richard Pruitt, the 26 of Mike Witt trying to work their way through, and a close call for Trent Dinkle as he tries to get around some of the slower traffic.
And another close call through the quad oval. There was one almost touch, and there was another almost touch as well. Mike Witt kind of struggling to get by these leaders, even on these fresher tires. He finally gets to the outside, a lane that's a little bit more open to him, and Mike Witt should be able to get by Trent Dinkle this time. Richard Pruitt, another car in the middle of Hudson and Dinkle now, kind of separating the two of them. And that's put Trent Dinkle under pressure now from Richard Reagan Jr. Remember, he's absolutely safe to make it to the end of the race. He's on 1 lap fresher tires than Hudson and Dinkle are. Richard Reagan Jr., we can't count him out for the win either.
No, we certainly cannot. The problem is he have enough? Does he have enough time? Matt Long now 10 seconds and closing on the rest of the field.
And for Abner Acosta, you can just barely see him in the background. 4 seconds behind Matthew Long. He's really hoping that just like in an endurance race, Matthew Long gets caught up in traffic and that gap comes down. Because right now, Matthew Long is in absolute control here. He could be going for that 4th win in a row. He's still got 9 seconds and 11 more cars to pass. He might have fresher tires than everybody, but it's still a race. 14 laps to go.
It really is still a race here, but for Chris Hudson, the question is, does he have enough fuel? And can Richard Reagan Jr. throw his hand in play and see if he can get around the 2 competitors ahead of him? As we see Trent Dinkle, a little bit of a wave down the back straightaway. Hopefully he has enough fuel to make it through.
13 laps to go at the line. It'll be a 68-lap stint for all these drivers who stayed out. Now, some of those laps were under caution, so it's not entirely accurate, but that is about the stint length that Johan Seminario did. It's on an absolute knife's edge to whether these drivers can make it to the end on fuel, and it's an absolute knife's edge on whether or not these drivers can hold off Matthew Long, who continues to carve through the field. Next up on his list is Brett Punkari, and Matthew Long has started to run into actual traffic now. It's not just single drivers. It's not just one car passes. He's got to pass Brett Punkari, who's fighting with Taylor Stout, who's fighting with Robert Besaw Jr. in the last couple spots in the top 10.
It's really picking up a notch here as Matt Long gets to the inside. He breaks into the top 10 as you see his teammate Taylor Stout letting him by. The gap now 7.9 seconds.
Richard Regan Jr. going for the move on Trent Dinkle for second. As Richard decided now's the time to turn the wick up, he gets to the inside of Dinkle. Dinkle is struggling on the outside, and Richard Regan Jr. is going to have second in the bag here. On that last lap, Matthew Long was only 7/10 faster than Chris Hudson. Has the momentum started to shift? Have the tires started to fall off for Matthew Long as he passes Robert Besaw Jr.? 13 laps to go. 7 seconds is what Matthew Long needs to make up. Here's what happened to Taylor Stout and Brett Punkari.
Ooh, a little bit of contact around. Ooh, almost a caution right there, I'd almost have to say.
Good save, but also a couple of bounces off the wall. Not going to make Taylor Stout too happy there. Abner Acosta also makes the move on Brett Punkari. He's brought the gap down between him and Long as well. It was 4 seconds between Long and Acosta a couple of laps ago. It's down to 3. There might be 2 drivers who have a shot at these.
Certainly is, and watching on, looking at the times of the driver of that number 28 of Matt Long, he's running almost identical lap times.
Richard Regan Jr. now challenging Chris Hudson for the race lead. Is this the race for the win if Matthew Long can't make it up here? Regan in line behind Chris Hudson, using the draft, using the bottom, using those slightly fresher tires. Richard Regan Jr. wants his first win of the season.
Certainly does, as we watch them work their way across the front straightaway. 10 laps to go.
Chris Hudson using the Chris Hudson line all the way up on the 3rd lane above the 2nd seam. But is it a foregone conclusion? Richard Regan Jr. off of turn 2, gets a little bit of a bobble though. The outside working for Chris Hudson. He hangs on to the lead. 10 laps to go, 9 laps to go at the line. These two are fighting tooth and nail over the lead, and this is good news for Matthew Long. These two are slowing each other down even more as they fight for the win. Trent Dinkle might slow him down even more as it becomes a 3-way fight.
That'd be a 5-car battle for the race lead, because there you see Waldo Walden, James O'Brien in the mix. Those 5 are going to battle it out for the race win here, as there you see to the inside, it's going to be Chris Hudson and Trent Dinkle. Contact is made. You push Chris Hudson right up against the wall. Tempers flaring in the closing stages.
Taylor is exactly right. Those are not lapped cars. Waldo Walden and James O'Brien are here for position. Hudson gets around the outside of Trent Dinkle. Waldo Walden rides up high. Could he get a top 3? I think for the first time in his PRL career, Waldo Walden could be on track for his best result in PRL history in the most difficult of circumstances.
He really is showcasing incredible talent here tonight as he's going to run the top side of the racetrack. O'Brien will clear him off turn number 2 as Richard Regan starting to pull away just a little bit. There you see Brandon Walters a little bit further back in 6th position. And then 4 seconds back is Matthew Long, but he is starting to fall off the pace. He's now running almost about a second, or pretty much over a second slower than what he'd been running earlier.
Has Matthew Long started to stagnate? Chris Hudson thought about peeking to the inside of Richard Regan Jr. through the quad oval, thought better of it, realized he was probably going to turn the both of them there. Here comes Trent Dinkle running the middle, You see all three lines at Atlanta being operated here. Regan on the bottom, Hudson on the top, Dinkle in the middle. Hudson's the biggest winner there, but here comes James O'Brien for third.
James O'Brien to the inside of his teammate Trent Dinkle. He wants a shot at the podium here tonight as he will battle on with his teammate as they come out of turn number 4. 6 laps to go.
Matthew Long currently going for the move on Pat Harvey for P7. I think it's too little too late for Matthew Long. He's still got 3 seconds to make up in 6 laps, and he's got to pass all 5 of these drivers. It has become extremely difficult for Matthew Long to make this alternate strategy work. Will it come down to these 5 drivers? Here comes Chris Hudson to the inside of Richard Regan Jr. There's a block down the back straight, but Regan can't cut Hudson off.
Side by side as they come out of turn number 4. Barney the Flagman will have the big high five. 5 laps to go here in Atlanta. Regan being very aggressive with blocking as he tries to hold on to the race lead. Shuts the door in front of Chris Hudson's face.
Last lap for Matthew Long, 33.4. Last lap for Richard Regan Jr., 34.0. At this pace, Matthew Long might be able to make his way into the lead, but remember, he needs to make these passes. Chris Hudson can't even peek to the inside of Regan this time. Regan knows what's going to happen. He blocks to the bottom. Here comes Chris Hudson to the outside. He loves the outside at Atlanta in 1 and 2. Can it work for him in 3 and 4? He gets to the outside of Regan Jr.
He certainly does. He's got the big momentum. He will lead that lap. That's good for him to keep in mind as they progress later into the run. If he can get a good run on the outside out of 4, he could win this race.
And Matthew Long has cleared Brandon Walter. There's nothing between Matthew Long and these 5. There he is at the back of your screen in the maroon entry. This is going to come down to an absolute dogfight here. 3 laps to go at the line. Hudson using the outside. Could he get his 2nd win in PRL competition over the 2nd winningest driver in PRL history, Richard Regan Jr.?
1.6 seconds separates your top 5 from Matthew Long. There he is coming around with a head of steam. 3 laps to go as James O'Brien goes to the top side.
James O'Brien could play spoiler here. The most consistent driver this season. Top 5s in every single race this season. Regan almost loses it off a 2. Here comes James O'Brien for 2nd.
He'll look to the inside. It's now going to be a battle. He can't make it work as they come out of turn number 4. Chris Hudson being very smooth and consistent. Regan being aggressive, trying to see if he can get around him.
2 laps to go, and Matthew Long has officially joined the fray to the back of Trent Dinkle. The question is, can he pass 5 drivers in 2 laps? He's going to have a struggle. Here comes James O'Brien to the lead of the race, to the inside of Chris Hudson. Is it going to come down to these 2? Matthew Long in the background to the inside of Trent Dinkle. He's got 4 drivers to pass, though. Chris Hudson versus James O'Brien for the lead of this race. Richard Regan Jr. sits behind. Waldo Walden hopes to pick up the pieces, frankly, as James O'Brien looks like he's going to lead this lap. White flag is out at Atlanta.
This is all for the marbles here in Atlanta. Can they make it to the finish here? James O'Brien leads into 1.
O'Brien, Hudson, Regan, Walden, Matthew Long trying to rip the top in 5th place, but that's going to get blocked off by Waldo Walden. Matthew Long, it's going to be too little too late for him. Can Chris Hudson do anything for James O'Brien into 3 and 4 on the final time? He takes the high line that's been so effective for him, but I don't think it's going to work for Chris Hudson. James O'Brien sat in the sidelines for so long, and the most consistent driver this season tops the field for the first time this season. James O'Brien shows up his private label Team Hype teammates and wins at Atlanta.
How about that? Some exciting racing happening right here on RaceSpotTV. The PRL Cup Series always brings some exciting action, stock car racing. As Chris Hudson, a little bit disappointed, I'd have to say.
That's absolutely understandable. Chris Hudson going for only his 2nd win comes up just barely short to James O'Brien, who, by the way, wins for the 17th time in the PRL. That puts James O'Brien 9th all-time in PRL wins. These are all-time numbers for James O'Brien.
Absolutely a stellar drive indeed for him as he burns it down here in hot Atlanta.
I'm not sure if Trent Dinkle made it to the line or he did make it to the line, but I think he might have been sputtering to the line. Trent Dinkle brings it home in P8 at the end of it all, unfortunately, after potentially running out of fuel. Abner Acosta was right behind Matthew Long as well in 6th, but I love fuel mileage races, Taylor. I want more of them.
I love them too. They always provide some amazing battles and a lot of excitement happening.
James O'Brien absolutely destroying the floor of that car through the bumpy infield grass in this old scan of Atlanta. But somehow I don't think he's going to care about that, because he's back on top for the second time in 5 races now. He won the season finale at Chicagoland last season, and he wins again at Atlanta this season. It's a whole new James O'Brien here. In a 33-car field, the 33 beats them all. Chris Hudson comes up just short, and Richard Regan Jr., after being all the way down to 30th earlier in the race, he just barely beats Matthew Long to 3rd place. Matthew Long went for the alternate strategy, went for all the moves, passed a ton of drivers, came up just short, though, in P4. Waldo Walden, potentially his first top 5 in the PRL NASCAR Cup Series. I don't know if that's a fact, but what I do know is a fact is that it's one of his best races ever in the PRL. Abner Acosta P6, Pat Harvey finished P7, and Trent Dinkle fell to P8. Brandon Walter and Josh Daniels rounded out the top 10 at the end of it all. Lou Christian 11th, Jeff Chandler in 12th, Robert Bisaw Jr., Brett Punkari, Scotty Johnson and Byron Johnson found each other once more. Eric Papineau and Taylor Stout and Jose Medina rounded out the top 20. Jordan Slater, Matthew R.D. Campbell, Jay McDonald, Mark Kalin, Mike Witt, Richard Pruitt, and Tom Amasi rounded out our lead lap drivers. A lot of drivers on the lead lap tonight. Clayton Ham and Charles Sumner went 1 lap down each. Ken Allen got a little bit of damage, went 2 laps down. Johan Seminario did as well. And the used car lot only consists of Stephen Hassett and Roy Grande, who both ran into some slight technical troubles with their vehicles. And that's 33 drivers, 33 cars. What a race tonight. We're still waiting for a race winner, James O'Brien. He may take a few more moments. He still may be celebrating his win, but while we wait for James O'Brien, he's just showed up. Here he is. James O'Brien, race winner. We were talking about how it was Hudson versus Regan. Was Matthew Long going to catch him? And then you come out of nowhere and steal the show.
Yeah. Long day. We all were cheering on our team owner at Rolex in Daytona. This is my favorite track. I love Atlanta. I think we were talking to the team earlier today, like we had a hot set this week. We made some adjustments before the race. Long run was our specialty, but I mean, at the very end there, it was all fuel gamble, saving your stuff at the same time. Trent tried something a little different than I did. Abner obviously pit. And I never fired off very fast. And I think that's what gave me that long run pace, because on those last few laps, if it wasn't for Matt Long, I think it would have been a little bit easier of a win, but I had eyes behind me knowing he was coming. But if I could just only focus forward, I think it would have been a lot more clean. But man, I feel like that's one of the hardest earn wins I've had in a while. Slippery 70-lap old tires, 1 gallon of fuel left.
So that's 6th, 5th, 5th, 3rd, and 1st this season. That's a pretty good score sheet. Your 17th win in the PRL as well. You've got to be coming into the second half of this season with some pretty great momentum. Yeah,
like I mentioned to you a few weeks ago, I really like open set. I think it suits me personally a little bit better because you can tailor it for yourself. I don't know. It's going to be a tough season. I'm missing next week, so that's going to have to be my drop week. But hey, I'm in the chase. Like that, I'm locked in now, so I have a little bit less stress on my shoulders here. Hopefully, it was a good show for everybody. Thank Private Label and Ethica, and congrats on Tommy Milner's 2nd place GTD Pro today with the Team Corvette, and everybody watching there. Yeah.
Indeed. Of course, congratulations to the team owner. Congratulations to the driver, James O'Brien. Victorious tonight. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
James O'Brien winning once more. Driver who came up just short. Probably the most disappointed person in the league right now. Chris Hudson is with Taylor Burris.
Chris Hudson, so close to get his 2nd win of the season, but unfortunately just could not get it. Walk us through what happened there for you, Chris.
Yeah, it was a pretty Exciting race. I mean, it was just, there were so many different strategies going on there. At the end, that last pit stop, some people decided to split that last run in half and take and go to the pits, and then we risked it and stayed out. It was real close on fuel. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it on fuel, but I kind of from the beginning of that run just kind of put myself in a position where I wanted to save tires and see if I could make it to the end. And it was super close. James did an awesome job. It was really clean racing, but we were side by side all over the place. So it was a lot of fun. I'm excited to go back and watch that.
A lot of exciting racing still to come here as we draw closer and closer to, of course, when the NASCAR season picks up. But your thoughts so far, the rest of the season ahead?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think so far I've been pretty happy with my results. I'd love to get myself a win here. I've come so close. I just can't get myself a win, but that's my goal here. I'd like to at least win one before the end of the season. But these finishes, I didn't want to throw this one away at the end. Second place is awesome, and I want to think about that team and driver championship, and then the obviously year-long championship is something that I think about too. So I'm excited for the rest of the season. I think we've got some good momentum here, and I think we'll have a good showing.
Well, that is Chris Hudson from Love Racing coming home in second place, as we joined by our third place finisher, Richard Reagan Jr. He is with Joey Tevin.
Indeed, he is. The back to the front. You kind of went under our radar, falling to P30. We didn't actually see what happened, but our intrepid reporter, Nick Hunter, misses nothing. And at the end of it all, you ended up where you started, P3.
I don't think I started P3, but
You were P3 at one point before the penalty came, I think.
yeah, I was. Made a mistake getting on the pit road. Went a lap and a half down. Got forced into doing that fuel strategy. We were close too. I don't know how Chris and James were able to do it, but congrats to them. That was an awesome race. I had to burn up my tires just a little bit to get up to them. So I knew it was going to be difficult trying to get around them and then hold the pass. And that hard racing, I got my right rear just a little too hot, and then I made a little mistake and kissed the wall, and just a little too loose after that. But I'll take that all day. I ended up running the wrong setup, so that was interesting. Worked on the car all race with Reese, and we got the thing dialed in pretty good. So I'll definitely take this P3 after being a lap and a half down for sure.
The second half of the season, there's sort of an interesting diversity of tracks. Iowa next week, then Daytona Road Course, Super Speedway at Daytona. It's going to open everything up. Which race do you think you're going to be strongest at, and which race is your chance to really shake things up?
Out of the three, probably Iowa. I like that place. I think our short track program's pretty good. So we'll see how that goes. I haven't driven the next gen at Iowa yet, so that's going to be interesting. But I think we got some things working out for us on those bumpy tracks. Daytona Road, you already know it's going to be an Abner and Trent show. And it's basically going to be fighting for P3. And then Daytona Oval, anyone can win that race. So you got to pretty much survive and hope you're there at the end. So we'll see how it goes these next couple of weeks. Very proud of my boys over at Dirty South for helping me week in and week out, trying to figure out these next gens. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but the work that they're putting in behind the scenes is definitely showing, and I think we're starting to figure out what I like in the setup.
What should I make Taylor ask your teammate Matt Long next?
Why he couldn't win the race.
Well, there it is. Book it. Richard Reagan Jr., P3 tonight. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you. I got to give a shout out to Dirty South Racing, everyone over there. Matt, Taylor, Chris James. Let me see who I'm missing. Bobby, Jim, Reese for being spotter, crew chief tonight. Awesome job as always. Neonism, you need a paint, go to facebook.com/neonism. Tell them the PRL sent you. Multiple Sclerosis Society, everyone that tunes in, you guys at RaceSpot and everybody at PRL.
Always a pleasure. Richard Reagan Jr., he's going to be reading about Ninja Trader and Mecha Sim hardware before we know it. But his teammate Matthew Long is here, and as I said, he's with Taylor Burris.
Well, Matt, of course, your teammate Richard Reagan Jr. was wanting to ask you, what was it that you were missing to win this race today?
Man, I think we were just maybe a little bit loose off. I don't know. It sucks. We were working on the car all week, and it was either fighting tight entry center or loose off, and yeah, just didn't get it perfect. So his guess is as good as mine.
Well, one thing we can keep an eye on here is what can we expect for you at the next round? Do you think you're now going to be like, all right, I lost the chance to go 4 in a row. Now it's time to go back to business here and try to see if you can continue on with another win streak?
I don't even look at it that way. I just take one race at a time and show up trying to win each week. So we'll do the same thing next week at Iowa. We got a great team behind us, so I'm sure we'll bring some good cars and we'll go at it there.
That is Matthew Long from Dirty South Racing coming home with a top 5 finish. A stellar drive, even though from coming from pit road to lap down to getting back on the lead lap to making his way into the top 5. But he gets ready to head Midwest to Iowa as we now have one more driver, I believe. That is Trent Dinkle. He is with Joey Tebben.
Indeed, he is. Trent Dinkle, talk us through what happened on the last lap. Did you run out of fuel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I put it in 5th gear to try and save, because when everybody pit, I was good. And then, like, 10 laps later, I was kind of like, uh-oh, we might be in trouble. So I put it in 5th, and that's why everybody caught up, because the car wouldn't turn in 5th gear. And, yeah, I just ran out a little bit too late. When I went over the line for the last lap, I had, like, 0.25 left in the tank, and I needed 0.3 to make it to the end, and it just sputtered a little bit and lost a few extra unnecessary spots, I guess, but it's all right.
Even with those spots lost, still a top 10 in the Cup Series this season. It's been a troubled past couple of weeks, as we've seen, but is this the Trent Dinkle momentum starting to turn around?
Yeah, well, it's crazy what happens when you don't get wrecked out every single race. So, yeah, I think, I don't really care for the schedule of Season 1, and these tracks aren't fun, and, I mean, to be honest, the way that the tire model is in this next-gen car, it's not particularly fun to drive for me, because I've been struggling with it since it came out in Season 4, but, I'm back at it. All the special events with iRacing are done, so we'll be giving her the full beans the rest of the season.
I'm going to make that a hashtag. Hashtag Dinklementum. It's coming.
There you go. I like it.
Or I guess Mo-Trentum would make more sense, wouldn't it?
Ooh, that's even better. I like it.
That might make more sense. Well, we'll see you at Iowa next week, and
okay.
hopefully it's turning around.
Yeah, sounds good.
Trent Dinkle, P8 tonight, but is it only the start of the Mo-Trentum, Taylor? What a race. A fuel mileage race for the first time in a little while in the PRL. Tires coming into it, fuel coming into it. What more could you ask for?
I mean, you couldn't ask for another better race here in Atlanta than what we saw here for the PRL, and another great racing action here on RaceSpotTV, and only makes you wonder what Iowa could do to continue on with this amazing season we've had so far.
Next week, it is Iowa Speedway. We've never run here in the Cup Series in real life. It was always an Xfinity Series or a Truck Series or a certain open wheel series round, but through the power of iRacing, we get to race the next-gen cars at Iowa Speedway. Same time, same place here on RaceSpotTV. This is not the only night of PRL action. Every week on RaceSpotTV, on Mondays, there will be GR86 and GT4 action. On Tuesdays, it's a GT3 doubleheader. On Wednesdays, it's the PRL NASCAR Truck Series and Xfinity Series. On Thursdays, it's the IRO4s and the F3s. And, of course, on Sundays, it's the PRL NASCAR Cup Series. We hope you'll join us for any and all of them. But until we see you next time, I've been Joey Tebben. Taylor Burris has been Taylor Burris. Our producer has been Hugo Luis. Until we see you next time, so long.